Good evening and welcome to another edition of Mental Health Monday, brought to you by Saving Grace Community Church and Grace House Cincinnati, a nonprofit and ministry of Saving Grace Community Church. This time of year has always been, as I look back and reflect as a child, has always been an interesting time for me, and I'm sure for some of those of you that are watching the change of weather and uh, looking at the calendar. The beginning of school has always been filled with excitement, discussions about, I'm going to date myself, before uniforms, getting it back to school, hook up, what we're going to wear, school supplies, as early as elementary, which was a school box back in the day, some paste, some glue, some crayons, some whatever. And for me, when I was coming up, we didn't start school in August. The start of school for me was after Labor Day. So after Labor Day, you could look forward to going to school. But this year is a little different, and the last 2 years is a little different from what most of us have had to experience. Um, when we were growing up, we didn't have to deal with the notion of a pandemic. But in this time of year, we've had to deal with that. So joining us tonight are a few people that know from an educational standpoint uh, and have been exposed to the challenges uh, and know very well what families firsthand have had to deal with in not only coming back to school, but just dealing with uh, educating kids during the pandemic. We would like to welcome to the show BJ McCullum. BJ McCullum is a high school math teacher, has been there in the Pittsburgh area for some 14 years. Also, we'd like to add, invite and welcome to the show, that is Superintendent Ramon Davenport. Those of you who live in the Cincinnati area know what a great job uh, he has been doing and he has done with Doane Community Schools. Welcome, my brother.
Thank you, sir.
And soon to join us will be Dr. Alicia Smith. Dr. Smith, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Dr. Smith serves as the Deputy Superintendent for Student Learning in Little Rock area and is a native of Cincinnati. And uh, I do know her as we went to Purcell together. And as I said jokingly, I was her tutor for Spanish. So if you run into her and you find that she speaks fluent Spanish, you can give all the credit to me. Uh, Not really. Uh, so tonight, guys, I was sharing. Back in the day, it was an exciting time because all of us can reflect going back to school. It meant for us, uh, those of us who hadn't have to deal with uniforms. It meant finding school clothes. It meant making sure we had school supplies, and in particular, it meant going to school after Labor Day, not in August. We would have never thought about the notion of the educators back in the day would never been, I don't think, in their mind the school would start before Labor Day, but such as it is. This is a very, when we reflect on our own time as students, as kids, what the kids have had to deal with during the pandemic has just been, it's been crazy. I can't imagine, and I know you all cannot imagine what it would be like to be out of the classroom for a number of days because of illness, not just something bug or something going around in your classroom, but in society. I can't imagine. I can't imagine how high school students felt who were seniors and who were looking for going on the college trips and doing all those sorts of things, or just having skip day, or just doing pranks, just some basic stuff that's often attributed to being a high school a senior, or just an elementary school age kid, just kicking it on the playground, uh, showing up in the classroom. What our kids had to face has just been unimaginable. It's just been overwhelming. And we know that studies have shown and studies have revealed that really it's been brutal. In fact, a study done back by the U.S. Department of Education, specifically the Office of Civil Rights, has made a couple observations recently. And one observation is that the students through K through 12, it appears that COVID-19 has deepened the impact of disparities in access and opportunity facing students of color in public schools, including technological and to other barriers that make it harder to stay engaged in virtual classrooms. In short, to say is that for those students that are challenged with having resources and having access to technology, and particularly students of color, it has been especially challenging for them and their parents to kind of navigate these things. And so, Dr. Smith, tell us a little about your role in Little Rock and how you, from your vantage point, you see how the pandemic has affected your school district.
Well, we service Little Rock. We sit around Little Rock. So the Little Rock School District sits in the middle of the city, and my district sits around it. So we have all four gamuts of instruction. So I have an urban setting, an affluent area, a rural area, and then a middle class area in the entire district. So I get to see all the gamuts of it. And so my role is I supervise all the principals and the learning service department. So all the work that I do is directly connected to what the students get or not get. So from my lens, it was a struggle initially when we shut down because our K-2 students didn't have one-to-one devices. We had been one-to-one 3 to 12, but we hadn't been K-2. So immediately we got the call from the governor's office. The next day we were shutting down. So we were trying to make packets and trying to get all kind of things set up to get those kids what they needed, and realized very quickly that our Latinx kids and our African American kids were going to be totally left behind if we didn't do some additional things for them. So we tried to get hotspots, and the state sponsored some, and then we purchased some, and we sent buses to those apartment buildings with Wi-Fi on it that the kids could access during the day. We set up times where the K-2 parents could come and pick up the iPads that they normally use in the classroom. So it was a lot of moving pieces that had to happen really quickly, but still trying to figure out how do we meet the needs of those kids whose parents don't have all the things that they needed to have their kids meet with success while we're off at that time. So it was difficult.
So you in terms of giving out technology, you say that you have all four spectrums. So you have a middle class, lower class, and maybe upper class. How is your district broken down by economics?
So you mean when it comes to technology?
Yes.
Or just in
general?
In general, we have our young people that are living in trailer homes, in one part, and then we have a group of kids that live in $1 million homes. So we go from that gamut all the way to the other end of the spectrum, right? So it's huge. The gap is huge. So I could drive down one street and see nothing but trailer homes or broken homes or furniture in the front lawn. And then I can go down here into my other district where it's gated communities, right? And you can't get in unless you got the code. So it's a large gamut. And we knew that there would be disparity because we knew that those kids that are over here were parents were going to sign them up for Sylvan, or they created these pods where they could drop their kids off, and there was a certified teacher there, and they paid for that during the pandemic. Where my kids over here, didn't have access to any internet, and parents were saying they're using my data off my phone and I can't afford it. So we were
Right.
trying to give out hotspots over here and
Wow.
trying to get we put buses in as many apartment complexes as we could in
Mm-hmm.
order to have the internet flowing during the day. So kids, then we partnered with some of the churches in those communities and
Okay.
actually gave them internet for free and said, if
Okay.
you connect up this internet, can the parents come to your site and use the internet so that kids can have access? Now, mind you, over here where I have these $1 million homes, I also have some kids that live in apartment buildings, right? But you know what color they were. So
Right.
those were brown and Latino babies that lived over here in this community because their parents wanted them to be in a diverse school, but still not having all the access to the funding that their counterparts had.
Wow. Wow. The U.S. Census reported, and really a lot of studies have shown the divide, the technology divide, uh, and and many have said it's really exposed the disparities. And the U.S. Census recently reported that in households with $100,000 more income, 85% of the children used online resources. By contrast, only 65% uh, with incomes of less than 50,000 and 76%. So it drops, the lower amount of money you have, the lower income brackets, the more likely you are to use technology, the more likely do you have access to the tools needed. And as you said about preparing packets, the more likely you are to use paper rather than uh, technology. Now, Mr. Davenport, you're in a bit of a different situation in
Mm.
that you have a lot of remote sites. So share with us a little bit about Dome and
Mm.
how um, COVID has affected your educating students and your diverse population.
Yeah. Um, thank you for having me on the show, Pastor Phillips. I really appreciate it. Um, Don is his own kind of separate, unique situation. We're our own school district, and so we don't belong to the traditional school district. And so here in Cincinnati, and so we have over 10 campuses across this greater Cincinnati area, and they're in areas, such as uh, uh, like North College Hill, Coleraine. These are kind of smaller pockets of the city. And so I created that vision based on, I didn't want students to have to catch multiple buses to get to school. They can just go to the school that's in their neighborhood. And so we've been around almost 20 years now. We're the biggest charter school in the state of Ohio. We're about 1,500 students right now. And so I had our experiences were a little bit different than Dr. Smith's. We were fortunate to be able to have a donor who donated I think it was $150,000 to buy to purchase laptops and hotspots and stuff like that. However, I ran into a situation to where the follow through and the buy-in was our biggest issue. And so what I mean by that is, being able to get the kids to log on was our biggest hurdle. And so they had the technology, they had, the internet, all of that, but they just didn't have that follow through. As well as, it was a struggle, with teachers as well to be able to teach them, and teach them basically how to log in and basically do their jobs from the time that they signed in for work, to be able to have that constant supervision of kids. That was also a struggle. So my situation was a little bit more unique, and I think if I would have had the buy-in from the teachers as well as the buy-in from the students, I think we would have been in a better situation. We did do packets. We did do that, but again, trying to hand out a packet and then expect, the kid to bring it back the next day or whatever was also a struggle. And so I'm only saying this to say this was not a easy situation. I think each school here in Cincinnati had their own set of problems. And so hopefully we don't we don't have to revisit this, but it was actually a real struggle. During this COVID situation.
Well, a lot of the stories talk about the complexities and the challenges of the students and the families, but you mentioned something that is not oftentimes highlighted, and that is getting staff buy-in. How did you encourage, strongly urge, I won't say coerce, how did you strongly urge those that may have been who may have been not who may have been apprehensive and being a challenge, encouraged, resistant to that?
Yeah, we had several staff meetings, and we basically let the teachers know this is your job, this is your duty. Of course, there is consequences for staff, not logging on, and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, they had to really want to do it. And I think what we're seeing right now, honestly, is some effects of teachers going into this upcoming year, of teachers who basically were at home doing absolutely nothing. And so it's hard for them now that they're back in session. You can tell that there was, because we're starting here in the next couple of days, and the staff has come back, but you can also tell that there was definitely some loss of work ethic, if that's the best way to put it, within the staff. So it's a struggle.
Yeah, because I mean, I always say it, because I've always, part of my career has been working in school-based services. And one of the things I came quickly to recognize is that there are some people who are in the teaching profession who really understand that teaching is a gift and a calling. And there's just others who are just unionized professionals. And so those that were in it to win it, I remember being a second grader coming to school, having ashy legs, and the teachers, and you couldn't do this now, but the teacher said, "Come here, boy, let me put some lotion on the legs." So that I remember teachers grabbing girls' hair and "Let me comb your hair, baby, and get you together." And that type of care and community. I mean, there's some legal things now that you have to face, but there was a lot more. I had a lot of those teachers that were really involved and really were hands-on and really were concerned about my total well-being. Not just behaving myself, but making sure I was learning, I was getting it, and would make sure I was together. BJ, welcome again to the show. You're in the Pittsburgh area, and you've been teaching for 14 years in high school math, correct?
Yes, sir.
One of the things that statistics and studies that have been done on the effects of learning loss, in particular with kids during the pandemic, reveals that reading and writing, there's been some decline, but not a sharp decline as an area of mathematics, in the academic area in which you teach. What have been some of the challenges you faced as an educator in the Pittsburgh area, in particular with the discipline of math?
Where do I start? Students, when we have students come to our school, or just I'm saying my class in general, students come to me, 3, 4, 5 grade levels below where they should be. One of the big issues that for me is getting them up to speed in their basic skills. Just basic multiplication, kids using a calculator for 2 times 3, that should be, quick and something like that. Another struggle, particularly with the pandemic that I had, we had a couple of years ago when it first went out, as kind of like what Dr. Smith and Mr. Davenport was saying, there was a buy-in to the students. We were a one-to-one school, so when the pandemic kind of hit, students were allowed to take home their laptops. But the issue was, was some students didn't have internet access, even though they had a laptop, but they just never logged in. They just never wanted to log in and, get online and, work and things of that nature and try to complete the work that was given. I mean, we had links set up, Zoom links for every subject students could come in. We had certain times of the day that students could try to get in there, and there was just no buy-in. It was difficult, it was tough. But for teaching mathematics, one of the biggest issues and problems is students, it's just their lack of basic skills. And here in Pennsylvania, we have what's called the Keystones in high school, and the middle school was the PSSAs. It's a standardized end of the year standardized test, to see kind of where they are. And for mathematics, particularly within students of color, not a lot of us are proficient or let alone even advanced. A lot of us are below basic and basic, but that's another issue because I can talk about that test forever and how just culturally about that test. But it's a struggle with our students in Pennsylvania and here in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania in general. It's just the upper the rich white school districts, they've got all the money for technology and things of that nature, and here in the urban school districts and things of that nature, we're just handing out worksheets because we don't have technology or because there's other things, money's being spent on and things of that nature. It's just, I mean, it's a struggle in itself. I think another thing with mathematics, there's too many rules in mathematics. Why do I got to do this? And why do I got to do that? And things of that nature. And our students, they just don't know kind of when to use this rule, when to use that rule, and why do I got to do this and why do I got to do that? And I try to explain to them, you guys didn't go to school to understand the why. That's why I went to school. Just basically know that you do A, B, C, X, Y, Z to get the answer, and the why will come, when you understand. So it's a struggle. It's definitely a struggle. And students also want to use the same rule for the same question over and over again, which you can't do in mathematics. But it's the basics. It's if I had to pinpoint one thing about it's the basics. It is by far, I think to me, by far the basics.
Well, especially for you as truthfully, you guys here is not a total representation of the landscape of education, because a lot of persons, when they walk into school, they encounter more females than they do males. So there's kind of a, it's fortunate we have you all, but they more look like Dr. Smith when you go in the classroom. So what particular challenges do you face in this pandemic as an African-American male, and trying to impart and get across to parents and kids that, not only is reading fundamental, but math is fundamental?
Again, where do I start? It's tough. It's just tough. Again, you try to as a math teacher, kind of meet the students where they're at, where their skill level is, and hopefully kind of build them up. I've never been that one teacher where we're going to teach at a test. If you're coming into me at a 5th or 6th grade level, and by the time you leave to me and you get to a 7th or 8th grade level, I think I've done my job. I'm not so much worried about you passing some standardized test. I'm sorry, Mr. Davenport and Dr. Smith. I'm sorry. If that's you guys, hey, that's not me. But it's just trying to get them to buy in. You just kind of speak to them. You just kind of talk to them, trying to build that relationship. Like, hey, look, I know that you're one-on-one, not in front of the class. I know that you're struggling. You try to talk to them. What can I do? What is it that you need in order to get you over the hump and things of that nature and stuff like that. And that's what any student who kind of struggles. Some hey, going to do, we're going to give them this, I'm trying to think, what do we use? Think through math and, to try to get their basic skills up and, things of that nature. And I mean, for some students that works, for some, they don't want to do it. They don't want it. But it's just, it's just extremely tough to try to get them to buy them. You just try to still communicate and just try to, try to hopefully get them engaged, different activities, not so much just always paper and pencil. I like playing games in my classroom. I love doing Kahoot, basketball, yes, I do basketball in my classroom. I love games. I try to, have different activities and try to make mathematics culturally relevant, because they always ask me, why are we learning this? And I have no feedback or no answer to them, like, other than the fact that, well, you guys got to learn this stuff for the Keystone that you're going to take into the year.
Right.
But and it's in Pennsylvania, it's always for the Keystone, for high school, because that's the test that you're in May that we always got to take, but it's just you try to keep them engaged. You try to keep, make your content culturally relevant, and just do what you can do, and kind of meet them where they are, and hopefully get them, where they need to be.
Well, Dr. Smith, I see you over there fidgeting. So there's some things that, in your perspective, there's some things that probably sound familiar. You've worked in an inner city school setting. Share with your perspective, and what's your reaction to BJ's comments?
BJ's dead on with, at the end of the day, for us in the seat that I sit in, is student achievement, right? Mm-hmm. And we look at student achievement as you showing me that those young people have gained more from you than they did when they walked in the door, right? The struggle with that is that they are coming to, and especially secondary teachers say, I went to school for this, and this is what I'm going to teach, right? But then we have all these kids coming to them with these gaps, and I don't want to say don't want to, I don't think they know how to fill those gaps. So for us right now, we're putting a lot in place to help our secondary teachers see, how do I help my class when they come in and they miss fractions and they miss slope and they miss how to reduce and they don't have those things. How do I do that? Because I'm continuing to teach Algebra 1, I'm giving out all these Fs, right? Because nobody's getting it because they missed them foundational skills. So it's a lot of what he's saying is so true. So how do we go back and do that? And from my seat, I have to be very intentional about what I do with all of the schools, right? So we have to look at it from a systemic way. And when we talk about this equity and excellence, what does that look like? And people struggle with that because they think equity means equal. Well, this school may need this and this school may not. So some of my influence schools struggle because I'm in a seat where you don't need it, you don't get it, right? This school needs it, they get it. So they may have additional staffing that you don't have because you don't need it. You have kids that are reading at and above grade level when they have a whole class of kids that are reading 2 grade levels behind. So they need a reading specialist. You don't need one. You just want it because they got it. So we struggle with this equity and excellence, this equity and what's equitable and what's equal. And so when he's saying that, math is a huge problem for our students of color because of the fear of it, but also because the teachers before them have not given them a foundation. So then when we go to Common Core, we push down all these standards from middle school to 5th grade, but didn't train teachers on how to teach at that level. Those teachers have been used to teaching really basic math, and now they got to go much deeper, and they hadn't been trained to. So those babies now get to 6th grade and they're already behind. So you have a trickle down effect. So if you don't hit it from a systemic way, you're going to keep having these gaps and you're going to keep having these holes. So for us, when we get to the high school now, they're excited. Why? Because we've been working on closing those gaps. So they say, I have gotten a better 9th grade student than I have in the last 3 years. They are coming with this skill, this skill, this skill. But it's intentionality to the work, so that they will pass the test at the end if I give them what they need. So I don't need you to worry about if they're going to pass the test. I need you to close these gaps or either enrich them when they hit the door, right? Because there are some Black kids that know math. Hello. There are some Black and brown kids that can read. So don't assume I can't because of the color of my skin. Assess me where I'm at, and then meet my needs. That is the hardest part of the work. And that engagement piece from some teachers, like you said, that was a big problem for us too. getting teachers engaged. The thing that we did that a lot of districts didn't do, we didn't close unless we had to, right? So teachers were really stressed in my district, BJ, because they were teaching online, kids that were sitting, traditional kids, the kids that parents said, I gotta have my child in school or I won't have a job, right? So we had kids sitting in the building, we had kids coming hybrid 2 days a week, and then we had kids that were online the whole time, and they taught all 3 ways. So it was a struggle for them, and they were stressed. And when we were walking the building, BJ, I got eyes curled at me, like, here they come, right? But it was the best thing for the kids. And we kept everybody safe because we only allow 55 to 65% of the kids to come in person, right? So your numbers were low. But it was hard. I'm not going to lie. That engagement piece and those babies that haven't been engaged, BJ, you wait till you see them. Because they've been watching Hip Hop Atlanta, American Medicine. They've been playing Fortnite, TikTok for 18 months. Wow. And so now they coming back and they looking like, and kids that were been online and at least attempting to be engaged, they've learned so much more. And so now we got to catch them up. Wow. So my kids are looking at me like, how we going to do it? I'm ready for the magic bullet. I don't have it. It's going to take hard work, commitment. It's going to take intentionality. We're going to have to be strategic, and we're going to have to bring some additional hands in here to help y'all out.
Mr. Davenport, hearing BJ and hearing Dr. Smith, in terms of your setting, how does what they say play out in your setting?
Oh, it's right on the money. It's right on the money. So, you know, that's why I'm sitting here just soaking all of this up, because I thought it was just me. So, you know, to hear that there is some that all of this stuff is making sense now, you know, I'm smiling over here, because I'm like, you know, we sit on our own little pocket, and sometimes, you know, people say, I wonder if other schools are going through this. Yeah, I can assure them. I can assure them after this meeting.
See, it's not just you.
No.
Well, the challenge is what I hear is you guys. It's about performance. It's about the teacher showing there's been some improvement, but how do you do that when so much has been stacked against you through the pandemic? It's already was a challenge, and for many of you, you do the best you can what's presented to you. So what comes from the home? How do you in the future? How are you going to meet those expectations? And is there any give within the systems you have? Go ahead, BJ.
You don't. I hate to say that. I don't. For how can I be nice saying this? I don't think you're really going to ever kind of meet the expectations of what your administration kind of wants. I think it's kind of what you said earlier. You just kind of do what you can with what you got, you know, and hopefully, like I said, if a student comes to you, you know, below basic or, you know, low level scoring, you know what I mean, and whatever their standardized tests or whatever it is that you're measuring students, and they can grow, you know, couple grade levels, you know, by the time they leave, I think you've done your job. But I don't know if you can really, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I don't think you can really, you know, you'll be able to meet them where they need to be. Well, as of how do you know you get them to fill in those gaps and things of that nature? As Dr. Smith said, you know, and even here in the Pittsburgh area as well too, in all the school districts, you know, there are schools who don't need reading specialists because their scores are off the charts. You know, I mean, 95% of their students are scoring below or scoring, you know, proficient or advanced. Why do you guys need a reading specialist and a math specialist? You need somebody in, you know, in the urban setting, you know what I'm saying, where test scores are 75, 80% below basic or basic and things of that nature. But you just try your best, you know what I mean? And just pray to God, you know, that, you know, students kind of get it, they get engaged, because you really can't force them, you know what I mean? Either they want to learn or they don't. You know, from a teacher standpoint, you still try to engage them. You still try to communicate with them. Still try to get them to talk. You know, just try to get them to, you know, care and want and stuff like that. But they also got to want to as well too. You know,
Mhm. Well, the
so
question is, the $1 million question is, to all of you, based on what you all had to endure, where you're seated and situated, has education changed forever, Dr. Smith?
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't think we'll ever go back to the way it was before the pandemic, because I mean we've created now a virtual school within our district. So we now
Mhm.
have what we call a driven virtual academy, and that's for those parents who actually, I mean, again, they want their kids to be online and to get the instruction, because they can actually provide them. If they miss something, they're going to be able to provide what they've missed for them. So they can be scuba diving in Hawaii or in Europe and still be online at school, which is what they want. And so now that this is free to them now, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's always been an aspect of it out there, but now it's ready and available. And they still can be connected to a school district, and their kids can still play sports, and they can be in the band and do all those things. But yet I can still, if I decide to leave the country for 3 weeks, where prior to this we would be like, you can't, that we have to count the attendance. But now I'm just checking in with my teacher, right? She's giving me the work for the week and I just check in.
yep.
And so that works for some kids. So I don't think it's gonna ever go back to the way it used to be. Um, that's just my take on it. You're gonna see more virtual schools popping up all over America now,
That
because
that's interesting, because what some studies have shown is that, as you said, every method of teaching, not every child needs to be in a Montessori program, right?
no,
It's a joke about how, I was placed, in the Montessori program, and that just didn't work for me as a child. I needed the structure. You just can't say work at your own pace, and just that just didn't work for me. I need to know this needs to be done by this
right,
time. When
right.
I don't have that. No, that didn't work for me. But what I remember working in truancy for a number of years, and absenteeism was, I mean, the old adage was, if you're not in school, you can't learn. So I'm just wondering, the challenge of those that have shown not to have the propensity or the commitment to virtual learning, uh, if they would be better suited in person. And I'm wondering, Mr. Davenport, with this trend, as Dr. Smith said, that there'll be more virtual opportunities. Particularly for those in your school, how will you combat, in terms of not absenteeism, but I guess time you log on and finish the work?
Yeah. We reached out to all of our kids and this upcoming year and told them that there was no virtual options. And so, we haven't had much of any, pushback from that. And we're trying to get back to some form of normalcy. Uh, so we got all of our kids right now coming inside of the building. Um, we do have, the option to do remote, but that has to be a special case. I made that decision this summer because our kids, honestly, very few of them really got much of an education last year. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. And so, our main goal is to graduate students. And with the state of Ohio, what I found out, honestly, over the last couple of years, they become real flexible on graduation requirements. And so, you know, you have your set of you have your set of standard graduations that me and you, and Dr. Smith and Mr. BJ, we all probably went through, the regular traditional way of graduating, but now they have these alternative pathways in which, a student can come out from just basically simply doing community service or a capstone project. And so they've made it really, I would say kid friendly right now. And I think they had to do that because they know that, the rigor that used to be, a couple years ago is no longer there.
Mm.
The kids are just not interested in it. So we're preaching more of, vocational options. With the kids learning, HVAC and electrical and construction. That's where it's at right now. Versus, preaching the university or the college. Right now, we're just, we're preaching that more of that vocational because, the kids have to have some form of a skill once they get the high school diploma. So, I mean, we're trying that. We're gonna see kind of what happens. But like Dr. Smith said, I don't think it's gonna ever get back because they've become spoiled.
Yeah.
People have become spoiled. They don't want to work. They want to sit back like they've been doing.
Spoiled, Mr. Davenport, or lazy?
Yeah, well, they were already lazy before.
I think.
You know what I'm saying? So, but I don't know what it is, man. Education is just watered down, man. I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it at this point.
Well, it's encouraging because the real is that Voc Ed was really popular one time.
Yeah.
And it's good to recognize and come back that some folk, they may be able to, they have the intellectual prowess, to advance and get more in degrees and so forth and so on. But that's just not them, So that it's great that you all recognize that it's okay to work in HVAC, to be an electrician, that there's some things that even with technology are just always going to be. And so that's a great recognition where you're seated to say, hey, we need to do that. BJ, as we prepare to close tonight, and we'll circle back around, what's one message that you would have for both parent and child as you begin the school year?
To the parents, I would say, please be involved and get engaged, in your students' academics, your child's academics. Ask questions. Make sure that your children are on top, with their studies and their academics and things of that nature. And do not be afraid to get your child help if they need it. I think that's one of the things about, us and, in the Black communities, that we're afraid to, tell, my child needs tutoring and stuff like that. And there are resources out there free, if you just look, that, you're to help out your children, things of that nature. And to students, I also tell them as well too, again, closed mouths don't get fed, ask questions, again, be engaging in your classrooms, don't be afraid to go up and talk to your teachers or, ask for help and things of that nature. If you're trying to find, that one teacher, it doesn't have to be that, your homeroom teacher or, your math teacher, English teacher, but try to find somebody that you can trust, you can talk to if you're having some trouble. Just don't be afraid. And I just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Smith, for you, Mr. Davenport, for you, one word to the parents and one word to the students.
I think we need to really focus in on a community, that the community in the city needs to help out. It's everybody's responsibility. It takes a village. And I think what's happened over the last couple of years is that we blame the parents 100% of the time. But honestly, the parents, yes, they have a responsibility, but they can't do it alone. It needs to be the community that backs all of the kids to help out in this situation. That's what it needs to be.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because some of the parents themselves, they used to have that TV show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
Yeah.
So some of our parents themselves have not been whizzes in the classroom and may have had some adverse experiences as children in the classroom and may be apprehensive themselves about education and might be rightly justified, in their opinion of it, of education, of the school. And so you're absolutely right. Putting a parent in a situation that's meant for in the place of a teacher, there are definitely some fallout because of that. One final word from you, Dr. Smith, to the parent and to the student as we enter into the next school year.
I think for the parent, I think for us as well, as Mr. Davenport said, we have to redefine what parent involvement is, right? Because we see it one way, but if a parent is if a parent is making sure a child gets online, if a parent is making sure a child is doing their homework, that's parent involvement. And so we think if they don't show up to the school, they're not involved. But if I'm helping at home, I'm just as involved as that parent that shows up every day. I think for our parents, do what you can do. And what you can do is just support the school the best way you can. If whatever that is for you, whatever that means for you, you need to do that. And only you can tell us what that is. Only you can make that happen. For our students, I just want them to understand that their education is their way to whatever they want to do. That if they decide to do whatever it is, if it's vocational, if it's college, if it's an entrepreneur, whatever it is that you want to do, you gotta latch on to that thing and decide that I want to own some of what I'm doing, and quit being afraid to get involved in your own process.
Thank you, guys. Just phenomenal. Your different perspectives based on your experience. Very grateful for you tonight. To our viewers, we want to thank you for sharing tonight and setting aside your time to join us in this very important discussion. For those that will watch this show later, we thank you as well. In all ways, we want to encourage you to feel better, become better, and live better. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.